could not care less about Texas, me and you. They created this give me country that don't value hard work. For a Texan to survive, all we need are some seeds and dirt. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone. We believe in family and we value our community. Gladly lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. And we don't believe that government should provide for all of society's needs. No, it's the pride of a Texan to give to others voluntarily. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country, for it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country, for it's long gone. They like our tax dollars and they love our natural resources. They don't want to see us driving trucks, they'd rather see us riding horses. And now they want to ban our guns, you know, especially the ones that look scary. But may I remind you of the Gonzales Cannon and the Alamo heroes we buried. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country, for it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country, for it's long gone. This last verse is straight from the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 and 2. Look it up. Texas is an independent state, yet presently we suffer. We no longer possess the right to locally self-govern. And now it's time as a people in which all political power is inherent. And in such manner we find expedient, we reform or abolish our government. I said, Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone.
Hey, good evening, fellow Texians. This is Daniel Miller, and it's a late night coffee talk. I was off last week, but not on purpose. I promise. We'll get to that here in a minute. And you know what? It's going to be a tough one this week too. If you hadn't figured it out yet, I was not on because I was under the weather, and I am Still recovering. Man, that's a heck of a story. We're going to get to it because it happened literally like right after Coffee Talk. The first one of the year that we did. So we'll talk about it. I'll see if I can't get this thing pumped up. I mean, it's my weekly time to decompress over a cup of coffee, and decompress is what it's going to be. So, look, before we get started, let me go ahead and knock a few things out. Just a big thank you, first and foremost, to every one of you that sent concern in last week when I was gone. I thank you very much. Your concern, but was both warranted and welcome. Okay. But anyway, thank you for tuning in this week. I got my cup of coffee. We're going to talk about a lot of things. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell. And of course, if you're watching on the TNM's YouTube channel, Super Chat is active. Any contributions you make through Super Chat go directly to the work of the Texas Nationalist movement. And man, I am going to show you something tonight that is the fruits of our labor. And for those of you that are dyed in the wool Texians, this is going to make your heart burst with pride. I hope it did me. And of course, look, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/Daniel Miller TX. I know it's different than every other thing that I've got, but like and subscribe. Still trying to build up those subscribers. Man, I never literally used it until recently, and you guys have taken us to a good number. We really, really need to build that up. But hey, share the links too. Be sure you share the links to these things. The more you share, the more we can spread the word, and it means the less money we got to spend on advertising. Man, I hate giving money to those big tech companies. I despise it. So share, share, share. Which brings me to Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure to like it and comment, and of course share if it is available. We actually broadcast in some private groups, and sharing is not an option out of those. But if you're watching on the TNM's main Facebook page or on my Facebook page, like it, comment, and of course share. And then hello to you guys on Twitter. Be sure you do the Twitter things, retweet, etc. And then, of course, just like the last time, we're on Rumble now. So congratulations. All of you who have asked for us to be on Rumble, we're there. And just search for it. Look for Late Night Coffee Talk. You'll find it. And I think my username over there is the Texian DM, just like everything else. So be sure to check that out. And I promise at some point we're going to get this Instagram thing worked out too. We've been working that thing forever, it feels like, and just no really good solutions. It's just not good. So anyway, look, do your thing, share, share, share. And of course, you got to do all the engagement, the likes, and the comments to help beat the algorithm. And of course, tonight chat is active, right? So you're going to help guide some of the conversation. So if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, all of your chat activity aggregates, and it goes in a little window over here that I cannot read because it's just too dadgum small. But Kara is running production tonight, so she is aggregating those. If you got questions, be sure to pop them in there, and you'll guide the conversation tonight. As much as we have time for. As you can tell, I'm still under the weather, right? It's a tough one. But anyway, look, let's get on with the show, right? I say show, great. Now it's officially a show. Thanks. I guess maybe it became a show when I got like an intro, like when there was an official intro, it became a show, right? Well, anyway, look, response to the last one that I did, the last coffee talk was phenomenal. I want to thank you all for your comments, and just it had to be done. I just I can't abide the things that were happening, and I have put it behind me. And it's done. It's there. I've said what I need to say. I will say no more. But thank you all for the kind comments. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to go back and watch it. We archive all of these. They're on the Facebook page, they're on the YouTube channel, they're there. So go take a look at it. But after that was over, we had to head right on out. And I actually talked about this at the tail end of coffee talk, of that coffee talk. We had to head out. Cook County Republican women up in Gainesville were having a candidate forum. And so we went up there, the team went up there, got to Gainesville. It was like 17 degrees at the hotel. I mean, it was bone cold. And so we got to pile in to the event, and got to see a lot of familiar faces. Saw Sid Miller there, saw James White. Our good friend James White was there. Saw Tracy Bradford, who's also running for lieutenant governor. They had candidates from all up and down the spectrum. Dr. John Spires was there, who's running for land commissioner. It was a really good group of folks. So we got there, got up there and did our intros, did everything else, but I could tell something was a little bit off, right? I wasn't really feeling too hot. I mean, I didn't feel sick, but something was off. You could tell when your body is telling you something. And I just thought maybe I'm tired. We've been running a lot. I mean, this is campaigning, so it's between campaigning and my day job where I put food on the table and working with the TNM and all this other stuff. I mean, it's conceivable that you would be a little tired. But got through it, got done. We went, grabbed a bite to eat, got back to the hotel. And by the time we got to the hotel, I just face planted in the bed. Next thing you know, I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm spiking a high fever, like high enough I'm night terroring and hallucinating in the room. I mean, crazy stuff. Like I haven't had fever-induced hallucinations since I was 19 years old and got the chicken pox, right? It was the highest fever I ever had. So anyway, Kara nursed me, got me through the night, and then the next day it was like, okay, we got to pour him into the car. We got to get him into the car, got to get him back home. Had to reschedule an interview that I had the next day. There was a couple of other things that we had to shift around, but as I told someone, they shoved my desiccated husk into a car and pushed me back to here at home base, and I crashed out. And I don't know what it was that I had, but thank you to Kara for taking care of me because it was pretty doggone miserable. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Hotze, Dr. Stephen Hotze, who endorsed the campaign, by the way. But you guys know Dr. Hotze. Dr. Hotze in Houston got me some meds, got that squared away after this thing rocked along for a few days. And I was able to, I was not still well enough to travel. I needed to be free from fever for at least 24 hours. And so the folks over at Grayson County Conservatives had a candidate forum for lieutenant governor. And I was not going to be able to make it. But Brian and Joy and the team over there made a way for me to participate via Zoom. So here they rolled me out of bed. I got presentable and was able to participate in the forum, and I think that I was coherent enough that I made some sense. But I think it turned out really well. So was able to do that. And of course that zapped me. And then wound up being fever free for enough that we had a candidate event over in Conroe in Montgomery County. It was, and I'm not sure, I'm sure Kara could probably put it in the chat there, who the organization was, but it was a phenomenal event. Packed room there in Montgomery County. I think it was maybe one of the Republican women's groups, but they had a packed house. I mean, it was packed and tons of candidates there, and was able to push through that thing. And, I was not communicable sick, but still, you run high fever for several days in a row, you're going to feel like a limp dish rag. So, but was able to get in there and lay down the case for our candidacy and answer a lot of questions. Met a ton of people, passed a lot of campaign signs out, campaign materials, energized some brand new volunteers, and of course had some great TNM volunteers that showed up out there. And I can't thank them enough for coming out. I know Glory was there and Cheryl Miller was there. Got to see Joe. And Kara could probably again post down there because it's all a bit foggy for me. It was a bit hazy. I'm not gonna lie. I was you know, I was there. I was there, and it just so happens. Oh, and it was Cynthia. Thank you, Kara. And Cynthia was there. But it just so happens that that day was also mine and Kara's wedding anniversary. So again, they shoved my desiccated husk into a car. I did a candidate thing, and then we went grabbed a bite to eat after it was all over with, and that was our anniversary. We spent our anniversary out there championing the cause of Texans and Texas independence. So it was kind of like our normal anniversaries. I don't know. I feel terrible. But anyway, so we did that, and that was a great event. I'm sure there's probably some, I think these are all, I think Grayson County, I think video's coming. I think Cook County is on Facebook. So anyway, so we did that event, did Conroe, and then I want to say, yeah, we came back home, and then I had to head out again. But before I headed out, Kara got sick. She got sick. So suddenly she gets the fever. She gets the stuff. And so I've got to do whatever I can before I leave to help her out. And thank goodness she started getting better before I had to leave. And of course, again, thanks Dr. Hotze for the meds. But I had to head out and head out to Rockwall for an interview in an in studio, and we'll get that published, posted, and shared as soon as it's available. And then we had a candidate event again in Cook County, so we were back up there for an LG forum for Cook County conservatives. And it was again a phenomenal event. Those guys put on a great event. But the interesting part is that they did a straw poll when it was all over with. And first and foremost, I was happy that the vote, the way that they had you tally your vote was for lieutenant governor was with Cookie Crisps, which was great, right? But they also took a TEXIT poll, which was pretty awesome. So we head out and before, so we go do our thing, head to the hotel. I face plant because we got to get up the next day and head to Belton. Right? Am I off? No, head to Belton. That's right. So Belton, which was last night for the Bell County Tea Party. And when we roll out of the rack the next day, they posted the results of the straw poll, which were this. Straw poll after the candidate forum. There we go. They were running a poll for governor, one for lieutenant governor, and the TEXIT question. And of course, some pretty interesting breakdowns there on the governor's race, and we can unpack that a little bit if you'd like. But there we go on the lieutenant governor's race. There is Dan Patrick on 0%, and there is yours truly at 47%. And I'm not gonna lie. I was extremely happy about that. But what I think is also quite interesting is that the TEXIT question, which was asked, 78%. 78%. So the people there at the straw poll, I don't know how we got a 78% on TEXIT and a 47% on me. That sounds like I need to work on something, right? But what I'm over the moon about is the answer to the TEXIT question, right? This is not some random yelling, show of hands, who wants to secede? Some, dippy little nonsense like that. People had an opportunity to go. They were all reminded to go vote, how to vote, and they went and they voted. And bada boom, bada bing, there it is, 78%. Woot, woot. Or, as I like to say, exactly how I told you it would go. right? What I said. You put it to a legitimate vote of the people. And I mean, I'm not saying that, the beans of the cookie crisp, a legitimate vote, but it's a much closer emulation to an actual vote than shouting at an audience, surprising them with a question, and then giving them a half a second to answer by shoving their hand in the air like they're a bunch of first graders, right? And it echoes what we've seen. Obviously some areas of Texas are not that high, right? Certain political persuasions are not that high. But the fact of the matter is we believe that if we go to a vote of the people and we have an open discussion, which we didn't even have with the straw poll, right? I mean, it was talked about, got a chance to talk about TEXIT a little bit, but boom, that's where they are, right? That's where those people decided to vote. They had an opportunity to go and deliberate for a minimal amount of time, at least cast a vote. And what's interesting about it is many of you probably remember he's a member of our advisory board, George Constantinides. George was a regional organizer for the UK Independence Party, or UKIP, back in the days when Nigel Farage was the leader. And then, of course, when Nigel went off with Richard Tice and their gang and started the Brexit Party, George went over there with them to the Brexit Party, right? George campaigned. He was an on-the-ground campaigner for Brexit. And, he said one of the things they would do is they would go set up tables, right? They were big into tables, very similar to what we do. And he said they would have a plexiglass container and they had ping pong balls and people could go and they could vote for leave and remain, right? You could just put it in the plexiglass thing and boom, there it was. A visual tally of the support. And that's what they'd do. So they'd go work those tables in public because that was the narrative they were trying to crush, right? This nonsense that we're hearing from the anti-Texit crowd right now, which is, it would never pass, it can never happen, no one supports it. It was just a visual way to do it. And so that's why we encourage polls like this, right? We encourage the question to be asked at candidate events. And, the more visible Texas supporters can be, the better off we all are, because it emboldens and encourages other people who may feel a bit bashful or sheepish about expressing their support publicly, which is one of the reasons that a binding referendum, an actual vote in the polls, is the way to go. It's the only way you ever get the real answer, is when there are consequences to the vote and people have the opportunity to deliberate in a period of time and then go cast their vote in a meaningful way in a secret ballot. That's the only way that it gets done. So it's phenomenal. But I'm going to show you as we move on. And a reminder, if you're just now joining us, drop your comments on Facebook, your chat in YouTube. Kara's aggregating those questions right now. And I see some typing over here. And I'll get to your questions here in a minute. But anyway, and that's a good one, actually. Janice, I'm going to get to your question here in a second, but I've got to do this first, right? Because I teased this at the very beginning, and I said it is a very happy moment, should be a very happy moment for us. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying that while I was speaking at the Bell County Tea Party, right, I got to be the opening act for Alan West last night, which was fun because we piggybacked off of each other a lot. I mean, there was a lot of thematic similarity there, but I got an opportunity, which is pretty rare in this campaign mode, to take some time and unpack some of the issues, some of the history, right? A little bit about how I got to where I was, and even though it was 10 minutes, that was about 5 times as long as you actually get at some of these events. So I took every opportunity to talk about my passion for Texas and Texas independence. And it was a phenomenal event. We passed out a ton of campaign signs. I mean, all kinds of things happened. So got done and visited with Alan a bit and swap messages with him this morning. And he mentioned that he was going to be in College Station. I had no idea that they were going to have a governor's forum, another governor's forum tonight in College Station. I just thought maybe it was another campaign gig, campaign event. And so imagine my surprise when this evening I tune in and boom, there it is. But almost forgot. So while I was at the event in Bell County, by the way, thank you, Suzette, for getting us booked out there and helping get that scheduled. And thank you to the volunteers who came out and helped us. We got to see Matt. I mean, it was just, we got to see some great volunteers out there, and one of our brand new LCs, which is a great reminder that if you were not aware, we are in the process of launching 60 local groups right now. 15, 16, 17, something like that are fully formed up, and the rest of them, the LCs are in training. So great stuff. But anyway, so I'm standing there in the back of the room, and I look across to the front, and I said, wait a minute, I know this guy. That's Wes Riddle. And Daphne's like, okay, who's Wes Riddle? And I said, okay, do you remember when we did Texicon? Now, okay, that's an old schooler. If you guys remember when we were doing the Texas Independence Conferences, Texicon, which, by the way, if you want us to start doing those again, drop it in the chat. Those were phenomenal. I had a wonderful time participating in those. But anyway, do you remember when we did the Texicon at Washington on the Brazos there at the event center? And there was a guy there who was an instructor at West Point who taught constitutional law and history. And his entire remarks, TED Talk style, was about the entire concept of the constitutional aspect of states withdrawing from the Union. She goes, yeah. I said, that's Wes. So I go talk to him. Sure enough, it's Wes. I haven't seen Wes probably since Texicon, right? And that was like 2012, 2013, the one that he was at. And so we got to talking about it, and one of the things he talked about is that even though he's been working sort of in country and then out of the country and doing some things, he said he's been monitoring the progress, been cheering us on, and I'm gonna tell you, Wes is one of the smartest guys that I've ever met. He is a phenomenal individual, and I could sit there and talk to him for hours, but I only had about 20 minutes with him that night. But he said he's been monitoring the progress, and he said, for all those intervening years, he's amazed at how we have been able to shift the narrative, to bring the TEXIT conversation into mainstream politics. And I'm going to tell you, my heart was about to burst because it's not often that somebody has been watching us do our work, has recognized the work that we've done over all these years, and acknowledged that what we are seeing today is because of that work that we have done. And so tonight, which brings me back around to that governor's forum, it was proven again. Okay. So let me set the groundwork for you. Let me do a little groundwork here. So week or so ago, I don't know, I was sick, and I don't know, but there was a bombshell poll that hit, and here it is. This was the poll that was released, and it was reprinted in Newsweek. I mean, it was all over the media. But what it effectively showed is that Allen West is now ahead of Greg Abbott. Now, you guys, I have told you how I feel about polls and polling methodology. I've talked about previously the problems that I had with the Brexit polling and how we saw it was not accurate. The presidential polling we saw in 2016, even the Scottish independence polling that we saw back in 2014, right? And the problems that I had with with the methodology used, and how often that methodology tilts it toward an outcome, right? So you guys know that when these polls drop, the first thing I do is I look at the polling methodology. And what was interesting about this poll was that it polled just shy under 2,000 high propensity Republican voters, right? Because this is a poll about primaries. The only people you really need to be polling are the people that are probably going to vote in that primary, right? And so that's why when you had that Quinnipiac poll that came out, it was like, okay, that thing is garbage because of sort of the range of people that they polled. But Newsweek picked this poll up, and it's like, if the major media outlets are going to pick up a poll like this, then especially one that gets released by a third party that's been contracted for the polling by a candidate, they're going to look at it and they're going to look at that methodology up one side down the other, right? And in fact, that's what they did. They found it was sound enough to post, but this is what I want you to understand about this poll is this is not I'm not trying to stump for any particular candidate. I just want you to see kind of the lay of the land, right? Is that you've got a sitting governor who is in a competitive primary race. Okay. There is no doubt at this point that it is competitive. And the fact that it's competitive is shown by, you've got Abbott out there actively having the campaign, right? He's doing a tour. I mean, our buddy Rich O'Toole keeps getting called to play at Abbott's rallies, his events. You have Abbott out there stumping with this Texas Taxpayers Bill of Rights. It's like, dude, I mean, are you just now figuring out that taxpayers need rights and you guys need to quit taxing people out of their homes and, stop growing government to the point that you're breaking the backs of small business? I mean, is this a newfound religion for you? Right. Well, so he's all this is to say is that he is in a competitive primary with a very high probability that he is going to lose. So the fact of the matter is that you would think that if an issue were taboo, right, if it was a third rail issue, then candidates would want to run from it, right? Because nobody wants to touch that third rail. Nobody wants to hit those, particularly when they've got a shot at knocking the king out of his castle. So imagine my surprise tonight when I tune in to this candidate forum and literally, like, I don't know, 17, 20 minutes in, something like that, this happens.
This is a yes or no question, so quickly we'll just go through each one of you. We'll start with you, Mr. Huffines. Yes or no, do you support a referendum on the ballot that says, quote, the state of Texas shall reassert its status as an independent nation?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, I like that.
Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Mr. West.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Is this still me? All right. All right.
Well. My. I almost want to play it again. Now, granted, look, we've played clips before of this very thing happening, right? But that was before, when candidates were trying to differentiate themselves from the sitting governor. And then here we are with the king about to get knocked out of his castle. And they get asked the question. Now, interestingly enough, the thing about that question that I love is that it is absolutely 100% the TNM's proposed ballot language, right? The one that's in this book. The ballot language that I wrote right after the big, long, extensive, exhaustive study of independence referenda around the world and how ballot questions are constructed. And by the way, if you're a member of the TNM and you have access to the reference library on the website, some of the documents that were used to research that question, the construction of that question, are there, right? It's in our TNM research library. So it's literally our question. And Kara wanted me to make sure to point out the fact that it's not the state of Texas maybe should reassert its status. The question, the state of Texas shall reassert its status. In other words, it's like, boom, here's the question. It is a statement of political will. And all four of those challengers, all four, including all this competition right here against the king, said absolutely they support putting it on the ballot. Absolutely. If it was a third rail, if it was crazy, then none of them would even give it the time of day. But yet again, proof positive that we have shifted the window on the TEXIT issue. We've shifted it. It's in the mainstream. And let me tell you, the fact that mainstream media is not picking it up ought to tell you everything you need to understand about which side of this equation that they're on. They are stumping for the establishment. They are stumping for the status quo, for the people who say that we should bend down and kiss the feet of the federal government, because in any other country on this planet, that would be bombshell news. That would be extra, read all about it. Here is the special edition of the newspaper. We are interrupting your regularly scheduled programming for an important news bulletin, right? But they're not. Much like the fact that when you have the president of an organization that has advocated for TEXIT, that wrote the book, 4-time best-selling book on TEXIT, is running for lieutenant governor and is driving Dan Patrick into apoplectic fits, so much so that he's having to call in Trump for a rally to bolster his support at the Montgomery County Fairgrounds, that should be bombshell. But they're all in for their guys. These guys are all in bed together. I don't care how adversarial they act. So, phenomenal, right? So if this didn't tell you, a straw poll in Cook County, right? If that didn't give you some indication, if all of the other things that have happened over the last year plus didn't give you any indication, here we are tonight. Mainstream political candidates, notice I didn't say establishment, mainstream political candidates, one of which very well could be your next governor, publicly, unapologetically, unsheepishly, without shame, hesitation, or reservation, announced that they support giving you a vote on a question that says the state of Texas shall reassert its status as an independent nation. I could die a happy man right now. Not really. I want to win, right? I want Texas to be free and independent. But I'm going to tell you, this goes a long way to making yours truly a happy camper, because it means that we are closer now, yet again, than we have ever been. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made history, but it's not over yet. We still have more history to make, because even with those candidates, one of which will very likely knock Greg Abbott out of the boat and be your next governor, if the lieutenant governor stays in place, you will not get that vote, because he will ensure that you do not. And here's what we know. Out of all the lieutenant governor candidates that are running, there is one that has publicly advocated for your right to vote on the TEXIT question. There's one, and that's me. So if you want the ability to vote on that, if you want someone to uphold your rights under Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution, I'm your guy. I got to be your guy. And if you want that vote, you got to get out and you got to help. You got to help work this thing. You got to help us get those votes, because $25 million war chest Dan Patrick is going to swamp us. with TV ads and radio ads and all this other nonsense and mailers, he's going to bury us. And we overcome that either with our own ads, our own mailers, or with sheer volunteer manpower. Every one of us getting out and helping to gather additional votes that will go into the polls in the primaries and vote for Daniel Miller for lieutenant governor. To only vote for Texas candidates, and not just me, right? Because it's not just me. You got to go to taketexasback.com. You got to go look at all of those pledged candidates and understand that if you have an opportunity to vote for any of them, you must cast your vote for them, because they too are a key part of making sure that your rights under Article 1, Section 2 are upheld. Point blank. Guys out there in Tyler like Charles Turner, right, who's running against Matt Schaefer. People say Matt Schaefer's such a good guy. Well, why didn't Matt Schaefer support your right to vote on TEXIT? Why didn't he sign on to House Bill 1359? He may be a good guy. I can remember sitting in a booth at Fuddruckers in San Antonio with him and with Steve Toth and literally talking about TEXIT. I gave Schaefer a copy of my book. And here's how this, and let me tell you, you want to remember the Fuddruckers conversation? All you have to remember is Steve Toth took his boots and socks off in the booth while we trying to eat a hamburger. And Steve, I love you, but your feet were gross at the table, right? Unnecessary. I'm just kidding. Nothing but love, Steve. You know this. But that conversation happened. It happened. So, you got Charles Turner running, or you got Deanna Robertson who's running, right? Down in the Harris County area, who can go in there and will absolutely 100% uphold your rights, or Joshua Ham, who will 100% uphold your right to vote on TEXIT. And all those other candidates, Andy Hopper. Go to taketexasback.com and look at the list. Find those candidates and back them. This has to be a cleaning from the state house to the schoolhouse, from top to bottom. And you are an integral part of making it happen. If we are going to break the back of the political establishment, you are the key piece. You are the only thing that's going to give us a competitive advantage. That is our competitive advantage, is the passion of our people to embrace their right of self-government and the right of self-determination. The passion of our people. That's what wins the day. So you got to get passionate, folks. You got to get passionate. Let's go win this thing. Okay, let's see what else we can dive off into tonight. Let's get to some of your questions. How about that? Okay, so Alec asks, he's on Facebook. He says, "What is your proudest moment in the TNM?" That is a tough one, because there have been many. Look, it's a roller coaster, right? It's a little up and it's a little down. But it's always forward, which I think is always a great way to look at it, because there's never been a time where we've taken a step back, right? We never lost ground. We've only gained ground. But it could be a couple things. It could be when we created the TNM, right? The realization that the TNM needed to even exist. That's number one, probably. I don't know if that would be my proudest moment, but it's a great one. When we were called to testify in 2009 for HCR 50 by Brandon Creighton back when he was a state rep, and how we were treated by the electeds there. We had been pariahs since even before this issue been taboo, and they welcomed us like rock stars. Testifying on behalf of the Monument Protection Act, I think that was another proud moment. Or when we flooded the San Antonio, it was the city council, it was their little Alamo commission with a bunch of letters from our people telling them to, stop trying to reimagine the Alamo. That was a big one, watching their faces drop. Regina Ross standing up at the 2016 state Republican convention and being the mechanism for some razzle-dazzle to have a full floor debate on the issue of TEXIT, or a vote on TEXIT. I mean, there's been so many. There've been a lot, but as I said, ups and downs, but always forward, and that's the great thing. And even tonight, just maybe that conversation that I had with Wes last night, or what I saw tonight during this, that brings the realization that what we're doing matters. There is an effect, and it's tangible, and that it's putting us closer to independence. So I know that's not the proudest moment, because that's one thing, but that's a few. And it's kind of like picking your children. Which one's your favorite? You can't do that. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so Janice, we're going to get to your question. Janice on Facebook says, I'm curious, in addition to TEXIT, what questions or issues are you asked to address most frequently? Um, okay, so I'm guessing from this that it's not about specific tech questions related to TEXIT, but maybe other policy issues. So I'm guessing this is from a campaign perspective. So that's my understanding of the question. So that's how I'll answer it. What I'm hearing the most out there talking to people, particularly with this campaign, other than the Texas issue, is the border, property taxes, the grid, and then here recently, there have been a lot of questions about water, water policy, which is great, because the water issue has been an issue that we've been on since the inception of the TNM, right? Sort of this forward thinking, looking at how we're going to be self-sustainable, how we can, manage our growth and the effect that it has. And water is going to be one of the critical issues over the next 25 to 30 years, and maybe even sooner, depending on how much Texas grows and how fast. And so, we've talked about things like desalination plants. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations in the TNM as sort of this forward thinking. And I even, got to tell people at one of the forums, talk about when I ran for state rep in 2012 against Alan Ritter. Literally, the only thing that Alan Ritter and I agreed on was the issues related to water. Whether we're dealing with the issues related to surface rights or groundwater, but primarily the issues related to building out water infrastructure here in Texas. And I have to, give credit where credit's due. Alan Ritter and I could not have been farther apart on most policy issues. But the one piece of legacy that he will have was that big water infrastructure legislation that he did, that effectively set up a water infrastructure bank, an investment fund that would allow municipalities in rural areas and cities to really work on building new reservoirs and things of that nature. So, it's so really and truly that's been what it is. I mean, you get a lot of the sort of same types of policy questions, but if I'm going to just get down to brass tacks, the ones that I'm being asked to address most frequently are the border issue. People want to know what the solution is for the border, and it gives an opportunity to talk about the full militarization of the state guard, shifting those assets and resources to full militarization, opening up enlistment, talking about why what's happening on the border is in fact the textbook definition of an invasion. And then property taxes. People are rightly concerned about the property taxes because everybody's getting taxed out of their homes. Nobody wants to rent from the government, which is exactly what's happening. And it gives me an opportunity to talk about that. Get the understanding, the agreement that the property tax is immoral. And so, if it's immoral, it must go. And we will figure out what to do on the other side of that, but we have to agree at a minimum. If it is an immoral practice, it must be abolished. So, we get to talk about that. But those are the ones. Those are the ones that I hear repeatedly. And I'll say this: if I'm going to put in kind of a close third, it's kind of a bushel, right? It goes from vaccine mandates, the shutdown of the businesses and churches, basically executive overreach and legislative weakness, how they've abrogated a lot of that responsibility to the governor, and the governor is stepping outside his bounds, his constitutional bounds. And so there's a lot of issues related to that get kind of lumped together as executive overreach, but they're all sort of part of the same root system. Okay, so Janice, I hope that tells you a little bit about what we're hearing out there on the campaign trail. People are really concerned about those things, and we're very happy to address. But of course, TEXIT. I mean, we're getting TEXIT everywhere, even if we don't get it at the campaign events, like at the forums. If it doesn't get talked about, or if it only gets briefly mentioned, all people want to talk about when they come to the table is TEXIT. That's all they want to talk about. For those that didn't know anything about it, they want to understand it. They are, some of them that haven't heard about it are just excited that it's being talked about and that there's a candidate out here that represents them in their wishes. But those that are familiar with it are connecting with the campaign, and they're like, what can I do to help? I'll put out signs, I'll hand out push cards. Where can I make a contribution? How can I volunteer? People are fired up. And so I'm happy to do that. And as a matter of fact, the T&M has books. They bring copies of TEXIT to set up at the table, and we gladly collect the donations for the T&M at the table, because it's about advancing the cause, right? Advancing the cause. Okay, AJ on YouTube asks, he says, I asked this in the Texit movement subreddit, but do you think there will ever be a time when Texiteers should protest? Yeah, and look, let me make a distinction here. And it is something we used to make. I think it was in the old county coordinator manuals, but I know it was part of the trainings back in 2009, 2010, probably all the way up to 2012 or 2013. Where when we talked about activities lists for our local leaders, we talked about two different things. We talked about protests and demonstrations, and we drew a very clear, broad line between the two. Because a protest is a public action in opposition to something or someone. Okay, that's a protest. But a demonstration was the flip side of that. It was a demonstration of strength or support or power. And that's, that was the thing. That all goes back to Gene Sharp, right? Learning the difference between demonstrations and protests. And I think there's times for both of those. When the vaccine or the lockdowns happen, our people were very happy to go out there and participate in protests. But we've also done rallies and demonstrations in support of TEXIT and getting it done. Now, one of the things that we have found out, and I think a lot of people saw during the lockdowns, is by and large, Texans culturally are not demonstrators and protesters, right? The 99% of the people in Texas have no desire to ever go protest or demonstrate. What they will do instead is they will donate, right? They'll do some digital. They will talk to their neighbors, and ultimately, if they are so led, so moved, and so organized, they will vote. And so, when you talk about these demonstrations and protests, a lot of times they're great, but at the end of the day, for demonstrations and protests to be effective, they have to have mass turnout. Okay. And so there are other ways to accomplish what the intended effect is for demonstrations and protests here in Texas without having to huddle up everybody at a certain location. There's ways to do that, and we've actually done it. As a matter of fact, many of you really participated in a protest, a virtual protest, this week when KHOU, the TV station down in Houston, published an article about the campaigns, right, about the upcoming primary ballot, and seemed to intimate that Dan Patrick had no opposition in the primaries. And we spun up, we sent out an email, we told you guys, here's their phone number, go tune them up. And I mean, it wasn't 30 minutes. And they were over there putting screenshots of the ballot, because that is an effective protest, right? Or when we have mass call-ins to the Capitol, that's a demonstration. So, it works. But both of those things it's just a matter of sort of what people picture as a demonstration and protest in their minds, of signs and pickets and things of that nature, versus, sort of other ways to do that now that we're in the 21st century that are to some degree equally effective. But look, there's a time for that, right? There will be a time at some point in the future where we make the call and we say we need every person who is pro Texit or anti whatever, everyone that can fog a mirror, be on the south steps of the Capitol. That day's coming, and I would suggest that everyone get ready for it, because that's just what we got to do sometimes. And if you go to my Facebook page, you're going to go see pictures of an independence demonstration in Catalonia, and I will tell you that is what a demonstration has to look like for it to be effective. And there's a whole album of those pictures, so you're going to want to take a look at that. Okay. Corrine says, I have been hearing more and more that many counties are passing a censure for Abbott. Can you verify if this is true? Well, we know Wise County recently did, and we know that Wise County was not the first. And of course, those guys, Wise County that is true. That is hardcore Texas country up there. But those guys, they did it. And my understanding is, and I don't know any specifics, I don't know what the counties are, but my understanding is that it is in the works right now in many other counties. So these censure resolutions, if it is Rule 44 under the Republican Party of Texas rules, then it'll have to be, it'll have to be dealt with. And let's not forget that when all this Rule 44 censuring started with Joe Strauss is when he decided he was not going to have any more of it. He was done. So they can be super effective. Okay, so Daniel on YouTube, he says, coming from a Vietnam vet who lives in Texas, the Biden administration has put a target on the backs of Texans. Texas can support itself no matter what happens to the rest of the nation. Amen. I heard that from a Vietnam vet last night in Belton, who was so excited about the TEXIT issue. He had been connected with the TNM for so many years. He actually said he got a copy of my first book, Line in the Sand, when it first came out, which was 2011. And he was just excited of all the progress that we were making. And, but he echoed that. He's like, look, there's no other way. People could say that, we're unpatriotic or whatever. He said, but this is the most, this is the thing that must be done. And that's coming from another Vietnam veteran, right? So, I think this is a good time to mention that about 40% of the TNM support base are veterans, prior service military. So it's understandable. The fight for their oath never ends. And you can tell the difference because the veterans that are in the TNM understand that they took an oath to a constitutional republic and principles, and not just blind obedience to a government entity. And it is a very solid dividing line between veterans on this issue. Speaking of Line in the Sand, Stan says, Daniel, any idea of when Line in the Sand will be back in print? Man, if I had a nickel for every time I got asked that question. I have been supposed to be working on this. History, TEXIT, the TEXIT book came about because my contract with Defiance Press was to update, expand, and revise Line in the Sand to put it back in print. That was how the whole thing happened. And while I was working on that book was written. So instead of doing what I was supposed to, I just wrote another book, but I still have to go back. I probably have got about half of it done. There's some reorganization that needs to be done. There's some updating because some of the things in there are dated. But it's got to get done. And I've got to get some breathing room if I'm going to get it finished, but I do work on it occasionally, just not fast enough for everyone's liking. But I did see today, there was like a used copy on Amazon for like $300 or something. I can't believe people are selling my book for that much. It's insane. Okay. Mr. Pepe. That's a funny name. Says, have you been contacted by other states that want independence? Absolutely. We've had a very active international engagement program in the TNM since our inception, where the purpose is to communicate and coordinate with independence movements around the world. And that includes outside of Texas, so that would be other states in the union, for the purpose of learning from one another, right? So if there's a fledgling independence movement out there somewhere in some country, and they're having some challenges and some experience that we have had could help them, then we share that. And vice versa. One of the reasons that we had such clear communication with some of the Yes Scotland people back during their independence referendum in 2014, why I have a photo album full of photos from Catalonia, from their independence from their independence movement and everything that happened over there. Why we're connected with the Brexiteers, or when we dealt with MSPI down there in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or how we came to find out how the Mexican federal government is facilitating the cartels and illegal immigration and all those things, when we connected up with advocates of independence in the northern states of Mexico. So yeah, I mean, we communicate with them, and of course, here in the U.S., we have communicated with so many different ones. Our first real, I think, sort of relationship came about with the folks with the Second Vermont Republic. Dr. Thomas Naylor, who was a professor emeritus of economics at Duke University, he founded the Second Vermont Republic, and was just I would classify him as a thought leader on the issue of states withdrawing from the union. But Dr. Naylor, that was the first solid relationship that we had. And then that grew. We got to meet with Lynette Clark up there with the Alaskan Independence Party. I think she's since passed. And then, there's just been tons. There's independence organization of some type in Maine, obviously Hawaii. There's been a kind of a weird development with the TEXIT people, but I think it's still moving and grooving over there. Obviously, New Hampshire, and our good friend Elliot Axelman over there, who just took over as the chairman for the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, or Elliot. I'm sorry, I probably should know what order those letters go in, but anyway, Elliot's a good friend, and he's not gonna hate me. He's gonna understand I'm still under the weather. But anyway, yeah, we do. We're contacted by them. We communicate with them as best we can, and as a matter of fact, I think we still got to get I know that the date is locked down. We got to get the arrangements done, but we're doing another joint panel. I do believe in New Hampshire again, coming up in March. It'll be after the primaries, right? So it'll be like that weekend after, something along those lines. But we're doing another joint panel, and we're going to keep working those lines of communication, continue to coordinate with one another, teach one another, learn from one another. And look, any of the experiences that we've had over the last 15 years, if it can help anyone else shorten their journey to self-determination, absolutely, we're gonna have that conversation. All right, well, folks, that seems to be the extent of the questions for tonight, which is good because, as you can tell, my voice is starting to go. I've kind of hit my wall, but I'm on the mend. Right? It's either going to get worse or it's going to get better. It's obviously getting better. So rock and roll. I love it. It makes me happy. And thank you again for all the well wishes. You guys, if I miss a coffee talk, you guys lose your minds, and that makes me feel great that you're concerned enough that what I've got to say matters, and beyond that if I'm not here to say it, it kind of bums you out, makes you worried. So don't be worried about me. I'm okay. I'm on the mend, and okay, super. All right. So let me do this before we wrap up. Let me see if I got any of this. I don't have any of this. Great. Whatever. So here's what I'd like for you to do. If you'd like to get more information on the campaign, we could use all the support that we can get. Head over to TexansForMiller.com. That's TexansForMiller.com. Or you can just go straight to my website, DanielOMiller.com. They both take you to the same place, right? But some people forget that my middle initial is O. So Texans for Miller seems to work just fine. But go look at the calendar of events, man. We have got a ton of stuff coming up. I am going to be all over the place. And of course, be sure you come out to the campaign events, get campaign signs, come out, get our handouts, and more importantly, come out and show your support, right? So much of the support that we get at these events comes from people that are there that have never connected with us, that see that you guys are there and you're excited, and your excitement gets them excited. And then, it spreads like wildfire. So be sure, if you can come out and show your support, be sure to come out and do that. We really do appreciate that. And then, by the way, let me just thank Claver personally tonight, and Paul Roby. So many of these events are happening simultaneously. I'm not able to be everywhere. And my rule has always been I honor the first commitment, right? I'm not going to, if I made a commitment to be somewhere, I'm not going to scrub it because something better came along. I'd love to be in two places at once, but it's just not possible. But I'm also a guy who honors his commitments, right? So if I could not personally make the event, my apologies, but it's called integrity. I got it. And sometimes it's inconvenient, but tough. I'd rather have integrity than not have it. Okay. But that being said, last night, let's roll back to the night I was in Gainesville. Claver went out and spoke on behalf of the campaign in Comal County for those wonderful folks out there. Room full of TEXIT supporters, and Claver just went in there and slayed it. He also did a virtual forum where he got to be a surrogate for me for the NAACP in San Angelo, and absolutely crushed it. And then, of course, last night he went representing the campaign at an event in Nacogdoches, and one of our good friends who is also a field director in the TNM, Paul Roby, he went up to Denton, up to an event up there, and got to represent us up there. And so Claver and Paul, thank you very much for doing that. And look, if you would like to help us out in that regard, contact the campaign. Go to the website, contact us. We'll get you set up, and the more people we can have representing our cause, the better off we're going to be, right? So, look, it's time for me to wrap up. A reminder, if you want to know more about TEXIT, head to TEXITnow.org. Again, that is TEXITnow.org. And, of course, as always, I will make the pitch for you to become a member of the Texas Nationalist movement. Head over to tnm.me/join. That is tnm.me/join. And then, one more plug for the slate of Texas First candidates. Head over to taketexasback.com, find a candidate or candidates that can represent you, and get your tail to work. Let's go win. Let's go win. So I will leave you with the words that I leave you with every week, except apparently on the weeks that I'm not here when I'm sick. And it is the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. That time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.